Hi, welcome to your weekly energy report. I always hesitate to call it any particular thing because it really depends on how you relate to it. But essentially, I approach it from the perspective of understanding what the collective energies are, how the planets are affecting us collectively. Obviously, beyond that, we have to look at our personal charts to understand how those things will affect us individually. But also, as I said before, there are outer planets and personal planets, and they have different relatability factors. So generally, I try to approach everything more from the perspective of how it affects the collective, and then from my own experience and how I'm feeling, because I do kind of feel that when I open myself up to the energies, I tap into whatever is on the horizon, and then I convey that to you so that it makes it hopefully more relatable. I apologize this week because I do not have my headphones in because I lost my AirPod charging case, and I don't want to wear a corded headset as it makes it very difficult to move around. So I hope the sound is okay on this. I'll try to project my voice in a way that isn't bellowing and discomforting, because the idea is for this to be an energetic flow and a respite from turmoil and chaos. So I hope that you find that here with me, especially because I had to prepare myself twice this morning in order to get around to doing this reading, because it took me a while to awaken myself into a place of spiritual grounding, and then beyond that I had a nightmare with a grotesque technocratic company that we all work with that I refuse to name, and that just put me in a really bad mood. And I wish that somebody had actually recorded my conversation, because I am so ridiculous, because I fly off the handle and start talking to some poor person who is in the Philippines or Indonesia about the horrors of technocratic overlords, and they're just probably thinking to themselves, oh my god, please make this stop. So universe, thanks for the joke. I see the humor in it. Now, I can tell you immediately that this expression of energy is very much in flow with exactly what we are about to encounter this coming week. We have Jupiter opposing the Sun, and Jupiter is in Aquarius, and the Sun is, of course, in Leo, and that gives me the opportunity to just let you know that it is my solar return this coming week. So it's a bizarre week, because there's a lot to talk about. I think the cards will explain it to us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to be succinct when it comes to the astrology, and just, so the Jupiter Sun opposition, what does that mean? Well, Jupiter is expansion, the Sun is the self. So with an opposition, generally that is a challenge of sorts to the process of expansion. In other words, the expansion is very real and happening, but it requires a certain form of dynamism that isn't always comfortable in order for that process to take hold. On an individuation level, that process can be chaotic when we are not at peace with our surroundings and people and things in our environment. So it's important to make that a primary focus this week, to ground yourself, not to make yourself small or to make things disappear that require focus and attention, but instead to find flow, as we've talked about many times recently. We facilitate flow, we also facilitate blockages. And if we are focused on the attachments, the expectations, the disappointments, inevitably we amplify that with the Jupiter influence to such a degree that that becomes the primary energetic force in our field. So we don't want that, and this is a forewarning for all of us that we don't have to fall into that if we do practice mindfulness, presence, and no projection and no resistance. I know, it's a tall order, but I know you can do it because we have been working on this shit for a long time, right? So, aside from that, we also have, okay, I'm going to go with a positive influence here, which is that we have Venus moving into Libra this coming week too. Venus is at home in Libra. This offers us a sense of balance in our emotions. So it's all an opportunity, because essentially on Thursday of this coming week is sort of like a portal. In many ways, I mean, because there's so many planets will be, from a numerological perspective, in Aquarius. And, you know, we've talked about, you know, this process of moving into the age of Aquarius. And of course, it's very difficult for us in our linear time-space contingency to understand, or to relate, should I say, to the massiveness of the shifts taking hold, because we look at things in terms of our lifetime. So a year to us is a long time, right? Because we only get so many of those years in this flesh incarnation that we're in currently. So, but you know, a shifting of an age or an era is massive. You know, I mean, we're talking about 26,000 year cycles and 800 year cycles, and you know, it's, well, there's many other ways of measuring those cycles, but you know, that's what's so beautiful about the zodiac, isn't it? Is that, you know, we have this less time-based and more archetypal-based process of moving through energetic changes. And so as that wheel turns, we move through all of those infinite possibilities over and over again as we level up in a spiral. We can get kind of impatient in our egoic need for validation, because we get anchored into the idea that we want to see results, and you know, the results are very, very subtle, and we're on the verge of another portal into a giant shift into the age of Aquarius, possibly leading to the sense of there being a duality, not between light and dark, which will always exist to some, I mean, it does exist, we just want to find the perfect harmony in dealing with that, but more in the sense of there being a duality of the dimensionality that people are existing in. And you may have already started to notice this. I certainly have. I mean, things that anchor me in the material realm, in the 3D, in the matrix, so to speak, are getting weirder and crazier, and either less tolerable or easier to transcend because of the absurdity within them, if you see that correlation there. And that's absolutely how I feel. So that, I mean, there's an element of transcendence there, but I still can't help but focus on the absurdity of it, or the, you know, it's that's Uranus, like in Taurus, is very much directing us into a place of looking at our lives and these random things that happen. We start to see the chaos and the coincidence. You know, serendipity tends to be more of a flowing notion, whereas like when there's chaos, we tend to think that it's unplanned, but the reality is Uranus is very powerful, and these sudden shifts and bizarre twists and turns that take place in our lives, it is a little bit like cracking a whip, a universal whip in a way, you know, and it shifts us. Like, of course it feels chaotic and tumultuous and uncomfortable, but very often what we come to realize when we're more attuned to our process is that we are in total co-creation with the universe to bring about these unusual twists and turns, because they essentially they serve as beacons and vectors in many ways, to either course correct or drive us further down a path. And again, there is no right or wrong. I mean, in your soul, the more in touch with your intuition you are, your natural ability to detect what resonates with light and what doesn't. We get better and better at navigating these things in a more swift and direct manner. But, if we have to go around the block one more time with a certain issue, or 10 more times, so be it. That's just the evolutionary process. It doesn't mean that any of us is ahead or behind, because, again, that's the restriction of ego and the limitation of time that we project upon ourselves through ego, trying desperately to make sense of things that, we're not supposed to know. We're always meant to remain teachable, but the idea that we reach any kind of end goal of knowledge is stupid. It is frankly stupid, and I don't mean that in the pedantic sense. I mean in the sense of literally not using our faculties to better understand things. That's a whole tangent I can't go into right now. Maybe if I finally get around to figuring out how to make videos on individual topics, because obviously I'm a little lazy and caught up in my own, I shouldn't say lazy. I get anchored into my own process, which makes it difficult for me to intellectually present some of these bigger picture ideas in a way that would be beyond conversational and more informational. But maybe that's just a natural process and I should just trust it. Probably. Right? Should I just shut up? Yes. And move into the cards? Because I think I've talked about these things enough that you understand what this process is all about. So we get that facilitation, just to put those things together, through that Jupiter-Sun opposition to move into the Venus-Libra energies of balance, calm, comfort, the ability to give and receive equally. Because all of this comes down to, we've moved beyond, we've been in this Leonine energy of self-love. We talked about the process, the individuation process of the first decan of Leo, the second decan being how we then externalize that individual process. And then, of course, now we're in that final run of Leo as we move towards completion in a week, Monday the 23rd. That's when we move into Virgo. This is all about, because there's so much tension, because we've talked about Saturn and Uranus and so on and so forth. And I know I keep changing the way that I pronounce the word Uranus. It's one of those weird words that feels electric to me, so it feels as though it has to be constantly evolving, and I know that may sound like an excuse not to say Uranus, because it is uncomfortable to constantly have the inner child giggling, but it really isn't about that. It literally comes out in that weird way, and it's the only thing in my life that really comes out that way, aside from when I pronounce Saturn. You may have also noticed, because I have a lingering English accent from my upbringing and years of Americanization. There's just certain words like that I pronounce in a really weird way, and I mean, because as an English person, I would say Saturn, and of course, as an American, I would say Saturn. So I end up saying it really bizarrely. Anyway, I hope you understand that I'm not saying satin, that I'm saying Saturn. I imagine you are capable of figuring that out. Yes, I am rambling. Yes. Anyway, let us start with our Spirit Animal Oracle card of the week that came out in reverse. So the protection message is probably going to apply strongly for us. Did I finish what I was saying about the individuation? Yes. Okay, so just to cap that off before I do read this, the final decan of Leo is, of course, about boundaries. That's what of course, I've been rambling and avoiding getting to the actual root. Boundaries. Because they're so difficult to put in place. Doesn't matter how much work we do. The reality is that we live in a construct where other people's egos are going to constantly screw with our boundaries. That is just a natural process as a human being. Perhaps when we transcend from 3D to 5D, it becomes easier for us to not be affected by other people's lack of regard and respect for boundaries, but that's what's coming up with this energy of the Jupiter-Sun opposition. That's what I've been really trying to say for the last 16 minutes. It seems to me that I have to do a 16 to 18 minute monologue, which is fine. I hope it at least translates in a relatable way to you. But because we've come to a place of honoring ourselves, of self-love through this Leonine chapter of 2021, we now find ourselves at a crossroads with how that actually is going to translate into our outer world. What do we not resonate with love? It's about unconditional love. It's like, where is the unconditional love in your life? And if you can't if you don't love something, if you don't find love in something, then that means that there is no love in you, in that part of your life. And again, we get very triggered by that. It's like, oh my God, how could, that's a horrible thought, that we don't, that we could be doing something, or we could be in a relationship with somebody, or we could have a relationship, a friendship, whatever it is, with another person, and there is an absolute absence of love. Which, of course, on a subconscious level is not a choice. But on a conscious level, it can become a choice, because we have the ability, when we resonate with love from within, to find love for anything and anyone that we experience or encounter. The difficulty is how we understand what unconditional love is. Unconditional love, of course, is a full acceptance of the other, in balance with a full acceptance of ourself. But that does not in any case mean that we accommodate another person's differences if they infringe upon our ability to love ourselves. That's really simple, but really tricky. And you will possibly find that you have to address that in more relationships. It's very timely that a friend of mine actually recommended a book to me about cutting cords of attachment that I've just started working on. And I've done energy healing before, where people, like healers, were going into the 6th and 7th and 8th dimensions and finding tears from how my soul has been ravaged, or at times conditioned. We all have that journey, but I never had any mastery of that within myself. I had to look to somebody else to find those things. And essentially, once somebody brings attention to it, then it becomes a part of your conscious journey, and then you may spend years unconsciously working on that, or subconsciously working on that. The subtleties of our journey are infinite. But now we are empowered with the possibility to, well, not just the possibility actually, with the essential requirement to no longer give energy and space to things that we don't love, or things that don't love us, because the reality is that I'm trying to figure out a way to express that, because I don't want to get into a black and white way of thinking about, that we can't love somebody or something that doesn't love us in return. But at the same time, it's about a choice of prioritization, because as we already discussed, we have a finite existence as we are in our current state of consciousness. So we can't afford any longer to waste our time, not from a punitive perspective, but just from the perspective that we love our lives so much and we are so in love with the essence of living that we have to, bad choice of words, but you'll understand what I mean, capitalize on our ability to love, which means putting our love where it can be reciprocated with unconditionality. And I can assure you that most parts of your life are not tried and true when it comes to unconditionality of love, because it's a very, very rare experience in the world as it stands today because of the egoic conditioning that has taken hold through programming. Again, these are very, very deep issues. And I want to just okay, before I go into the cards, I will eventually get there because now I'm at 22 minutes. I just wanted to say, because this was also a point that I had made in my mind that I wanted to discuss. Think about the degrees and the angles of astrology and the zodiac wheel, and think of the infinite possibilities that you could have, your sun in Leo, your moon in Pisces, your rising sign in Taurus. I'm speaking of myself here. You can have Mercury in Virgo. You can have, all of your planets, Saturn in Cancer, all these different things that are, your specific imprint in this life at the degrees that it was at. My Leo at 29 degrees, critical degree, my rising at 16 degrees, all these different things. Well, you could have an entirely, you may be part of the experience that we have in our infinite embodiment as humans, as we try to transcend into other dimensionalities and higher consciousness, is that maybe I will come back in my next life exactly as I am in this life with the same players, but everyone's just a degree off. Or next time maybe my rising sign will be Cancer instead of Taurus or whatever. Think of what a beautiful experience that is as a work of art, as we are our own work of art. I always quote, as I said before, the great philosopher Helena Bonham Carter, a stretch, but I remember reading a quote from her speaking about that, where she specifically said, why is it so hard for us to not see? We're always looking to create something for, to be immortal in some shape or form. Fame, all this kind of nonsense that gets, acknowledgement. It's all validation based if it's not based purely on creation and learning, right? So that's really what it all comes down to, is that there's just this expansiveness within us to perpetually live our lives as if we are our own work of art. And that is so liberating to know that, if you can't pay your taxes next year and you have problems with the IRS or whatever the tax department is in your country, that's a brushstroke. on your canvas, and it's beautiful. And that's what we're here for. It's to evolve and to lift, to raise the energy of consciousness and of the earth, to be as close to being vibrationally resonant with Gaia, but at the same time expanding. That's progress, not the technocratic horrors of, physical and mental and medical, psychological tyranny. That's not the goal. That is the dark at work, and it's not even necessarily a conscious process at work. But it's important to remember that the light is within. Sorry, I'm poking myself in the face. The light is within, no matter what. And you can burn your candles, and you can clutch onto your crystals, and that will help, but still, that's about frequency and realigning your frequency. But inside, you're there. Visualize that connection to light, bringing that light into your body. Every cell. I don't know about you guys, but I had a total health chaos this last week because there is what some people call ascension sickness. These are when these energetic upgrades take place and things go a little haywire and chaotic in our bodies. And it's like, silly things, like I got breakouts all along the top of my forehead for some strange reason. Really, I have very clean skin. I take care of my skin. I eat very healthily. I may stray once in a while, but mostly have a very clean diet. So when that happens, it's stress related, of course, but the way that it comes out, and then it's I had glandular discomfort in my neck, and I had a patch of dermatitis or psoriasis or something on the back of my head. Things that are very unattractive, very unappealing, and not really, it's I was out of alignment consciously with my own body, and at the same time these energetic waves were coming in, and that's sort of what happens. And usually you'll find that there's sleep disturbance that accompanies that, heightened sleep disturbance for those of us that already struggle with our discipline around sleep, or just because we're physically encountering troubles with sleep because of anxiety and so on and so forth, or physical ailments. But all of these things, I could tangibly feel them. So if you were feeling them, just know that that was totally normal. Okay, now I'm going to shut up and actually read. So Vulture Spirit came in reverse. So I'm showing it to you in reverse. I will turn it up right now because I think we need to focus on the protection message with it coming out in reverse, but we'll read the whole thing. Number 63, adding up to a 9, beautiful divine completion number. Vulture Spirit, nothing is wasted. Interesting as a card, considering the energies we're talking about, because that confuses me a little bit, but I'm sure there will be clues. So here we go. The Oracle message of Vulture Spirit. What seems hideous has its own beauty, and the recycling and repurposing the vulture does is as important as any other activity in nature that supports the cycle of life. Vulture Spirit's message is that nothing is to be wasted, for nature sees value in everything that exists. So that's also unconditional love, right? What seems rotten and ugly has the potential to be transmuted into something beneficial, and you are reminded that any suffering you have, excuse me, because my nose always starts itching when I do these readings. I'm not picking my nose. That any suffering you have experienced has not gone to waste. Wisdom and understanding that arose from the experience are talismans that will serve you on your journey wherever you go. What is decaying is only changing form and will fertilize seeds you wish to plant, turning that which has passed away into the substance that will support new growth. Exactly what I was talking about the illusion of chaos being something that is there to denigrate or to destroy or decay into further chaos, you know, that it's not. It's like the Uranian energy, for example, like in tension with Saturn energy, you know, it's about expanding on the restrictions, you know, breaking free of those restrictions in order to be open to the unknown. Because, of course, we only have the reference point of what's known. All the unknown about our capacity to use our minds, our bodies, the sylphs and unseeable energy that surrounds us from the universe, that wealth is constantly evolving with us and helping us to evolve without us even knowing it. Where was I? All that you may wish to deny or discard has value and can be repurposed and reintegrated into the new you that you are becoming and the new life that you are dreaming into being. No pain was in vain and no experience was wasted, for you have the power to use it to co-create something far better. This is the miracle in your partnership with Spirit. So it's a big renewal, release, emphasis on grounding ourselves spiritually, not resisting, but staying in a peaceful, harmonious place of acceptance in the week ahead, because there's a big energetic shift, a big opportunity to level up here. The protection message. Do you wish you could run away from your past or deny your mistakes? Not so fast, says Vulture Spirit. You have gained something valuable from the experience. Let your grief or anger move through you, and soon your emotions will transform, for you will come to see that you have learned and grown. The alchemy of transformation is a gift from Spirit, so never disown what embarrassed, disappointed, or shamed you. Actually, I've got to say that there's been a few times in the last week or two when, you know, my previous egoic restrictions of shame and toxicity, all that conditioning, got in, you know, in the moment I had these moments where I'm like, oh my God, that's like humiliating or embarrassing, or I don't want to be seen like that, or I don't want to expose myself in that way. I want to maintain an illusion, a mask, in order to curate my life in a way that people think of me in a certain way or whatever. And it's all bullshit because it's not authentic if you're trying to control it. You just are who you are, however that comes out. That's why for me, these weeklies are a brilliant exercise in that for me, because I can honestly, authentically be myself, because I'm really talking to you, but I'm talking to myself when I'm recording them live, right? It's like, I gotta face myself. And yeah. The alchemy of transformation is a gift from Spirit, so you never disown what embarrassed, disappointed, or shamed you. It will soon be a source of great wisdom and strength as you work with the magic that allows miracles to be created out of sadness and beauty to arise from ugliness. Vulture Spirit wants you to know that you embody beauty and that the alchemical transformation of your past is happening already. Hang in there, you are so loved, and so much beauty is waiting to come out of all of this. So that also sounds like a strong message to whoever is like perhaps still having occasional dark nights of the soul, to understand the purposefulness of all of that and to honor it as an essential part of the journey. You do not get to any form of enlightenment or higher frequency without going through that purging, and the dark nights of the soul are the manifestation of that purging in us as human beings, where we have to face the truth, face our authentic self, face that it doesn't suit the narrative that we've developed in order to protect ourselves, in order to not have another experience of something that we didn't like in the past, or that hurt us or traumatized us or whatever. It's like, by not having those experiences, all you're doing is cutting your nose off to spite your face, because then you're not giving yourself the process to evolve. The only way to evolve is to have failed and then to try again, right? Easier said than done. I understand how painful some of those deeper issues that have affected our inner child can be, but remember, you are your own parent. You are not under the spell of authority from teachers, gurus, parents, husbands, wives, however the dynamic plays out in your life. You are your own sovereign parent and inner child, and that's your fusional process constantly in your life. Okay, our Sufi Wisdom Oracle cards of the week. We got 2. So interesting. I'm going to start with the first, and then I think that they go hand in hand, but this is what came out first. We got Gift of Freedom. These cards are very beautiful. I do love the artwork. They speak so much. Like, look at that. That's an energetic gift of freedom. That's what we are aiming to embody. Break away from your attachments. Wait. Yes. Okay. The quote this week is from Aflaki. Shelter is found in solitude. Freedom is found in the elimination of worldly passion as a goal, and friendship is found in not having any inclination to control unconditional love. Again, prepare for the possibility that you may need to let go of relationships, a relationship, some form of relationship in your life. Definitely focus on, as I am right now, whatever remnants of attachments there are in relationships that you can still allow to exist in your life, of course, but without the attachment. Once the attachment's gone, the trauma is released, and you no longer have that problem. That doesn't necessarily mean that you want somebody who traumatized you in your life either. Remember that. That's also your free will. Life is seldom smooth. It is often full of setbacks and challenges. The journey to freedom requires us to give up the continual search for self-satisfaction. This oracle comes to you on a soft breeze with a musky scent to deliver you from the limitation and restriction imposed by thoughts and action, to free you into growth of love. Dear one, it is too easy to tell yourself you deserve freedom simply because you want to indulge your impulses. Sufi wisdom guides you not to seek this way of life for praise or admiration. Believe in yourself. Know that your satisfaction comes from when you can observe your own behavior objectively. Exactly what we just talked about. Taking responsibility for your life and thoughts and actions is crucial to finding your freedom in love and friendship. Satisfaction and a sense of well-being come from acting in your life and helping others to find that same freedom. Being free, again, being of service is unconditional love too. And when we find ourselves in that position, I was just reading an anecdote of this in the book that I was recommended to read. That, to find a teacher who's willing to teach, not someone who's looking to prove themselves as being a greater teacher than the student. That is a very rampant element in spirituality, unfortunately. But it's where we are still caught up in our ego. The reality is that whatever infinite wealth of knowledge or experience or healing capacity that we have within, that's not going to diminish because we've enabled somebody else to gain access to the same knowledge, right? And it's a tricky one for a lot of people. When you give, you receive like tenfold. That's the way that life works. that you have to give unconditionally. Being free means you may need to face many challenges. You may need to make sacrifices to achieve your goals. By taking responsibility for yourself and your actions, you will grow into the privilege of freedom. Trust that love will offer you satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment that will lead you to freedom. The mantra is, I am letting love guide my actions, knowing that embracing responsibility is what will give me peace and a personal sense of freedom to live the life which is right for me. Our second Sufi Wisdom Oracle card is this beautiful card, Make a Change. Welcome change into your life. And I will hold that up when I read it because I think you can meditate on that image. There's something about it that there's something, the water, the tile, the essence of dimensionality and emotionality. That's what I see in that. So see if you can find some truth in that. If the foundation of your life falls apart, do not take it into your heart, for it will harm your spirit and steal your joy away. Be happy. There is no need to suffer over gaining or losing things, for having is bound in time and will always be taken away. Hafiz, our good friend Hafiz. Making a change is something we normally do not like because of the fear of the unknown. I mean, literally, I'm paraphrasing everything that I have already said, right? It's a very clever universe, of course. Hafiz comes to you as an oracle to help you welcome a change in your life. He is guiding you to surrender to what is beyond your control and focus on your own internal transition to a new reality. He wants you not to allow change to weaken your heart and take your joy away. Dear one, a change in direction or a development will move you to realize a future hope or dream. And this was very much indicated in this astrology, that Thursday, Friday of this coming week, there is the potential for some commitment to a radical change. It doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't have to mean leaving your job or like your husband or whatever, your partner. It can just be a massive change in how you approach those things that will radically alter how the dynamic that you exist within in relation to that person or thing shifts into more possibility, more expansiveness, more growth, more openness, more reward. Be assured this change could bring great satisfaction to you. After you have determined precisely what you're dealing with, you can develop coping strategies that are best suited to deal with the circumstances. The oracle wants you to do what you can to generate new ideas and finish what you start. Nothing is meant to stay the same forever. You may need to let go of some things you did not expect. In doing so, you will find that you are propelled towards a different path. Accept the change of starting on a new path, which may turn out to be more suited to you. You never know what possibilities the change might open for you. I am willing to... This is the mantra, sorry. I got it wrong anyway, so it's probably a good thing. I did tell you it was the mantra. I am... Well, that doesn't make any sense. It says, I am will remain. So I think it's meant to say, I will remain open to the changes happening in my life. I am determined to give myself time to accept changes as new possibilities to improve my life. Yes, some bizarre syntax there, but what that comes down to is allowance. I think we talked about this last week or very recently in any case, we do have this resistance that comes about as a result of the expectation of transformation to take place quicker than maybe it actually will. And that it's very important to remember the process. We commit, there's the expression, at the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you. Well, that is very true. You commit to an idea, but if your expectation is that you're already at the end goal at the moment of commitment, then you're going to live a life of disappointment and failure. That just goes without saying, because everything is a process. You commit, and then you build and grow, and it will not come in the form that you visualized. It's just the way that life is. It's not a la carte, menu of life. That doesn't work. I mean, it does to a degree, but, let's say you wanted your, I don't know, Wiener Schnitzel, but instead somebody served you a, lemon poached chicken breast. I'm sorry to those that do not eat meat. I don't mean to be offensive there, but I'm just, that's basically an analogy for the way that life serves us, right? It's essentially the same thing. It just comes in a different package with a different flavor. What else do we have? This is self-explanatory. I'm not even reading the message. Sacred Destiny Oracle card of the week came out very pronounced. Release. Again, we see in the image that release is the drifting of leaves in the fall. So there's no attachment to those leaves. They become compost, right? They then feed the next growth. That is what release is. I need not speak further on that because I'm going to make this video under an hour. So I need to get into the cards of the week, even though they're complex, but they were not expected whatsoever. But I guess that's because I was also in denial of how I was feeling myself. Because what we have here in our anchored energy that we're letting go of, that we're lifting out of, the Ten of Swords, heavy. The Six of Swords, which is moving away from that heaviness. Of course, let's not forget, this is all mental. The Ten of Swords is mental. This is when we have had 10 experiences that anchor us in a expectation, a way of expecting things to evolve from point A into point B. And what this is really saying with the Six of Swords, which is moving away from our strife into calmer waters, into new opportunities on the horizon, via the Emperor energy, that is self-ownership, that is mastery of our own domain, that is being master of our own empire, the creation of our own work of art, that is our life. What this is saying is, in order for us to move out of this, what has been forced upon us by the universe in recent times is a confrontation with those prescribed standards and notions to force us to evolve beyond them, to challenge the status quo in order for us to break our stereotypical responses to archetypes and to actually understand. For example, for me, I work for I work in a very male-dominated environment. When I say male, I don't mean just that they have a penis. I mean that it's a very male energy, very yang energy. And my boss is a very authoritative emperor figure, where before I found conflict in that type of a personality because of the issues that I had from being conditioned by a horrible karmic father relationship in my life that was abusive and violent and hateful and that rejected, I had a father that rejected everything that was authentically within me. It's a sort of unfathomable to what degree that actually was the case. That conditioned me into recoiling from the type of authority that an emperor holds. I would see that as combative. I would see that as, a limitation, as something to rebel against or something to avoid altogether, because I didn't have the emotional maturity to be able to embrace it, invest in it, and see myself as a sovereign being of worth in relation to that person's own ownership of authority and sovereignty. So when that shifts, suddenly we're able to move into where our present energy stands. And I didn't take a clarifier on this because I didn't think we really needed to, because I think it just speaks for who we are at this very moment in time. The Queen of Swords, who is in ownership of her thoughts and her feelings and her understanding of her experience, but at the same time, as long as she's not, like, nobody crosses her path, she moves forward as a teacher of those things. She moves forward with her lessons learned, worn on her sleeve, in an experiential way in order to elevate the experience of other people. There's a curiosity to the Queen of Swords in her authority. There is a thirst for new ways to evolve. That may not have been there in the past because, as I just said, because we have these conditioned responses to archetypes based on our own trauma and negative experiences, painful experiences. So I do, before I move into our outcome cards, I will tell you that 2 Asha Zen cards came out to enlighten us on that process, and we got these 2 cards. Isolation, which is a 3 of Swords, which is the result of the 10 of Swords energy, the trauma programming, what we're finally breaking free of if we allow ourselves to. And adventure, which is what comes as a result of letting go of that. So I'm going to read those for us so that we can have a better understanding of that. Where am I? 122 for the first one. Okay. In our society, men in particular have been taught not to cry, to put a brave face on things when they can get hurt, and not show that they are in pain. Interesting that I brought up the father and emperor dynamic, right? But women can fall into this trap too, and all of us at one time or another might feel that the only way to survive is to close off our feelings and emotions so we can't be hurt again. It's uncanny, right? If our pain is particularly deep, we might even try to hide it from ourselves. This can make us frozen, rigid, because deep down we know that one small break in the ice will free the hurt to start circulating through us again. The rainbow-colored tears on this person's face hold the key to breaking out of this isolation. The tears, and only the tears, have the power to melt the ice. It's okay to cry, and there is no reason to feel ashamed of your tears. Crying helps us to let go of pain, allows us to be gentle with ourselves, and finally helps us to heal. We are miserable because we are too much in the self. What does it mean when I say that we're too much in the self? And what exactly happens when we're too much in the self? Either you can be in existence or you can be in the self. Both are not possible together. To be in the self means to be apart, to be separate. To be in the self means to become an island. To be in the self means to draw a boundary line around you. To be in the self means to make a distinction between this I am and this I am not. The definition, the boundary between I and not I, is what the self is. The self isolates, and it makes you frozen. You are no longer flowing. If you are flowing, the self cannot exist. Hence, people have become almost like ice cubes. They don't have any warmth. They don't have any love. Love is warmth, and they are afraid of love. If warmth comes to them, they will start melting, and the boundaries will disappear. In love, the boundaries disappear. In joy, also the boundaries disappear, because joy is not cold. Beautiful. And so, in alignment with everything that we just discussed, what does this page of Pentacles have to say in adventure for us? I shall hold the card up for you because this is a good one to meditate on as you're reading, as you're hearing this. When we are truly in a spirit of adventure, we are moving just like this child, full of trust, out of the darkness of the forest into the rainbow of the light. We go step by step, drawn by our own sense of wonder into the unknown. Adventure really has nothing to do with plans and maps and programs and organization. I don't want to see my face. What's happening there? The page of rainbows represents a quality that can come to us anywhere, at home or in the office, in the wilderness, or in the city, or in a creative project, or in our relationships with others. Whenever we move into the new and unknown with the trusting spirit of a child, innocent and open and vulnerable, even the smallest things of life can become the greatest adventures. Zen says truth has nothing to do with authority. Truth has nothing to do with tradition. Truth has nothing to do with the past. Truth is a radical personal realization. You have to come to it. Knowledge is certain. The search for personal knowing is very, very hazardous. Nobody can guarantee it. If you ask me if I can guarantee anything, I say I cannot guarantee you anything. I can only guarantee danger. That much is certain. I can only guarantee you a long adventure with every possibility of going astray and never reaching the goal. But one thing is certain, the very search will help you to grow. I can guarantee only growth. Danger will be there, sacrifice will be there. You will be moving every day into the unknown, into the uncharted, and there will be no map to follow, no guide to follow. Yes, there are millions of dangers, and you can go astray and you can get lost, but that is the only way one grows. Insecurity is the only way to grow. To face danger is the only way to grow. To accept the challenge of the unknown is the only way to grow. And this, amen, is exactly what we have just been talking about. It is letting go of these restrictions that prevent us from authentically being ourselves for fear of falling on our face or being humiliated or being rejected or whatever the condition may be of negative emotion. So we never reach the end goal in a linear sense. That's not the purpose of life. Until you take your last dying breath, whether you're in 3D, 4D, 5D, you are having a human experience. How you have that experience will shift the dimensionality of your experience. But that's a learning process. So wherever you are on that path is perfectly fine. Divinely perfectly fine. Because you are exactly where you're meant to be. And you cannot skip steps. So if you need to go through more shit in order to reach a point where you can transcend something like that, so be it. But even once you've transcended it, some other wheel of fortune will spin, and you'll have a new experience that gives you a new opportunity to expand, that can only come through temperance, that can only come through challenge, and something that could potentially make you feel insecure. Let's not forget, insecure means without a sense of security. It doesn't mean self-loathing, you know? Semantics. So complicated, right? Okay, let's finish this off. Obviously, I'm not going to finish this in 1 minute to make it under an hour, but I think we can have it done in 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm finishing up, I promise. I'm glad you stuck with me. This is a really important message here, and it's really flowing, so I hope you stuck around to see the whole thing. I don't mean to point my finger. I don't know why I'm doing that, but I am. Okay, so interestingly, our outcome, it is this sort of convergence of the archetypes into a whole, into coming into our whole, because we have the King and Queen of Pentacles that came out together, along with the Knight of Wands. These insisted on coming out together. I don't know why we got 3 cards, because it was the same thing with our anchor root, you know, the 10 of Swords, 6 of Swords, emperor, that shift into our authority and our authenticity. And this is the same principle. It's the yin-yang principle. This convergence, once we come into this self-acceptance and this understanding of this perpetual growth cycle, and we surrender to that we do not have control over that we have control, for example, to end our cords of attachment that keep us anchored in dynamics that don't serve our evolutionary process any longer, or never did, but we didn't know it then, you know? That's what this is all about. That brings us into alignment between divine masculine and divine feminine, which subsequently makes everything that we experience perfectly divine and beautiful and fulfilling and wholesome. And we get through that into our inner child spirit of the Page of Wands, which is a playful, sensual, curious, excited, adventurous spirit. You know, to tap back into that energetic flow where even if you're overwhelmed with activity, or, you know, you don't have an abundance of friends or connections in your life, suddenly you can find that joyful spirit to reconnect in a way that isn't threatening, that doesn't make you feel like you have something to lose before you've opened yourself up to the possibility of gain, right? So I did again pull what was only meant to be one Asha Zen tarot card to clarify on that, and we got two of those too. So these are our closing arguments for the week to give us that sense. We first got the Dream, which is the Six of Cups, and then we got which is the inner child, so it'll be interesting to see what that message is. And then the Four of Wands, or Four of Fire in this deck, which is participation. Again, very much an emphasis that this dynamism, as we move through this portal into this Aquarian, Leonine, like, you know, Jupiter opposite the sun, like, you know, this is a huge, huge, huge energetic opportunity for us to move into an embrace of our, how would I put this? Inner fire and water. That's pretty much what's coming to my mind. So let's read the message of these two cards. So let's start with the Six of Water, the Dream, 108. Let's see. Take a look at that while I read it. Some enchanted evening, you're going to meet your soulmate, the first person who will meet all your needs and fulfill all your dreams, right? Wrong. This fantasy that songwriters and poets are so fond of perpetuating has its root in memories of the womb where we were so secure and at one with our mothers. It's no wonder we have hankered to return to that place all our lives. And it does make me want to sing that song. You do remember that song, right? Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger. You may see a stranger across a crowded room. It's very Disney, but it is a beautiful song. Anyway, I can't remember what musical that was from. Was it South Pacific or something like that? Anyway, blah, blah, blah. You know, I just love putting a little Broadway number in there somewhere. Okay. To put it quite brutally, it is a childish dream, and it's amazing we hang on to it so stubbornly in the face of reality. And the modern world couldn't be more transparent in that way, because the idea of, you know, I mean, again, I'm not saying that you can't find some deep soul connection, because there's certain people, certain souls that we encounter that we have experienced over and over again in various different forms. In fact, everybody that we encounter probably is on some level tied to us in some karmic, fated way. But the romanticization of it, the falseness of the cultural narrative That's what we're talking about here. And then when we're disappointed by it, and it never lives up to that expectation, the Disneyfication, fairy tale process, our egos get triggered into defensiveness and closing ourselves off, right? Nobody, whether it's your whether it's your current mate or some dreamed of partner in the future, has any obligation to deliver your happiness on a platter. Nor could they, even if they wanted to. Real love comes not from trying to solve our neediness by depending on another, but by developing our own inner richness and maturity. Then we have so much love to give that we naturally draw love towards us. Very important. I'm going to read that again because I think that we have to understand that fully, because it's the answer to so many things. Real love comes not from trying to solve our neediness by depending on another, but by developing our own inner richness and maturity. Then we have so much love to give that we naturally draw love towards us, because we're not trying to possess, we're not trying to attach ourselves, we're not trying to be connected to somebody conditionally. We allow each other to exist in pure authenticity and sovereignty, and that's where love can truly exist. And yes, I know it's really, really hard, especially for those of us that have been, traumatized into codependency and not knowing our self-worth, and maybe only being able to understand that theoretically and not in practice. These are all the principles of what we're working on constantly, right? This is why we spend time together. So remember that. Be kind to yourself, but also be mindful of that. This has been said again and again down through the ages. All the religious people have been saying this. We come alone into this world and we go alone. All togetherness is illusory. The very idea of togetherness arises because we are alone, and the aloneness hurts. We want to drown our aloneness in a relationship. That's why we become so much more involved in love. Try to see the point. Ordinarily, you think you have fallen in love with a woman or with a man because she is beautiful, he is beautiful. That is not the truth. The truth is just the opposite. You have fallen in love because you cannot be alone, or because you see something in the other that you don't see in yourself. You were going to fall. You were going to avoid yourself somehow or other. And there are people who don't fall in love with women or men. They fall in love with money. They start moving into money and into a power trip. They become politicians. That too is avoiding your aloneness. If you watch man, if you watch yourself deeply, you will be surprised. All your activities can be reduced to one single source. The source is that you are afraid of your aloneness. Everything else is just an excuse. The real cause is that you find yourself very alone. And honestly, I'm not pretending that I'm transcendental in any way, but I love being alone. And actually that's a major priority for me this coming week, is that because I've been so overwhelmed with my workload and my attachment to validation through work, I have not spent enough time in self-care. And when I'm trying to fit mediocre social engagements in, like with people that really are not that interested in my process or who I am, I waste a lot of my time. And there's the boundary that's going to be coming up for me this coming week. There are people that I still allow to be in my life that, they're convenient in a certain way to avoid whatever it is that I feel I'm missing, that I can't provide for myself in my mind. And it's a waste of time. It really is a waste of time, because I don't get any joy out of it. I feel triggered. I feel uncomfortable. I feel obligated because of whatever values were instilled in me to feel that somehow I have to put up with things that just aren't acceptable to me. It doesn't mean I have to be angry at the people or resent them or even judge them. It just means releasing it as, no, that's not for me. And I know that sucks and it's hard to do, especially if somebody's been around you for a long, long time. But I've talked about this. I talked a lot about it last year because it was a process that I was experiencing very much in my life. There just is this point where we have to be mindful about what kind of participation we allow in our lives. Good segue, Alex, because that's our final card, the Four of Fire, participation. 84. I know it's long, but this is a big week, so. Each figure in this mandala holds the right hand up in an attitude of receiving and the left hand down in an attitude of giving. The whole circle creates a tremendous energy field that takes on the shape of the double dorja, the Tibetan symbol for the thunderbolt. The mandala has a quality like that of the energy field that forms around a Buddha, where all the individuals taking part in the circle make a unique contribution to create a unified and vital whole. It's like a flower whose wholeness is even more beautiful in the sum of its parts, at the same time enhancing the beauty of each individual petal. You have an opportunity to participate with others now, to make your contribution to creating something greater and more beautiful than each of you could manage alone. Your participation will not only nourish you, but will also contribute something precious to the whole. Interesting that we have that duality there of like showing the opposite of the codependency of the desire for relationship to fill the void, and then the idea of participation in the oneness, you know? Have you, and I've never had the experience of having a romantic relationship, for example, with somebody who viewed life that way too, so maybe that will be my next challenge in life, is to experience that. And I did have a thought process about that recently, so it's probably, well, it's possible if I'm open to it, you know? Have you ever seen night going? Very few people even become aware of things which are happening every day. Have you ever seen the evening coming? The midnight and its song, the sunrise and its beauty? We are behaving almost like blind people. In such a beautiful world, we are living in small ponds of our own misery. It is familiar, so even if somebody wants to pull you out, you struggle. You don't want to be pulled out of your misery or your suffering. Otherwise, there is so much joy all around. You just have to be aware of it and become a participant, not a spectator. Philosophy is speculation. Zen is participation. Participate in the night leaving. Participate in the evening coming. Participate in the stars and participate in the clouds. Make participation your lifestyle, and the whole existence becomes such a joy, such an ecstasy. You could not have dreamed of a better universe. And I suppose that's interesting, because I was thinking while I was reading that, specifically of work, and thinking, you know, there's an example of something. You may have a job that's contractual because you have to pay your rent and get by. That's like a lot of us do have that restriction for whatever choices we've made in our lives, and it's just the way it is because we're here to, you know, transcend surviving, but at the same time we still have to survive nonetheless in order to thrive. And what if you look at it from the perspective that you're participating rather than being obligated, right? And that can go for everything in your life, your relationships, your friendships, your, you know, whatever it is. I leave you to figure that out for yourself. I am so sorry that I kept saying that it would be shorter than an hour, and it's an hour and 15 minutes. I love you. I send you infinite blessings. I wish all the joy and clarity that you can possibly have for yourself. I do take this moment to celebrate myself, as it is my solar return. As I said before, that's not an invitation for everybody else to offer their well wishes. I feel them already, so thank you. But I just want to acknowledge that I have been through these now almost 46 rotations of the sun, and I look fabulous. I love you. I love myself. Bye.